When you outsmart a narcissist, you do not just win an argument, you detonate the very fantasy they live inside. Their entire sense of power depends on you being predictable, manageable, and a little bit blind. They walk through life convinced you will never, ever figure them out, never step outside the script they have written for you. So when you do, when you see through the mask or flip the script, it is not a small victory. To them, it's treason. Inside their head, it sets off a chain reaction. The first blow is shock because they never believed you had it in you. Then comes rage. Why? Because you dared to catch them. From there is paranoia. That's what takes over. They start living in constant surveillance mode, watching, tracking, and smearing because you have become the threat they cannot control. Beneath all of that fury sits something they can never admit: shame. For a split second, they're forced to see the small and fragile truth of who they are. That shame quickly mutates into calculation because they cannot sit in defeat. They have to twist the story, they have to punish you and rewrite reality until they are the winner again. And the craziest part, deep down, there is a flicker of respect for you. For a moment, they admire your clarity, strength, and your intelligence, but that admiration is unbearable. It curdles into envy, hatred, into a need to destroy the very thing they feel they should respect. That's why their behavior becomes so erratic when you outsmart them, because inside they're fighting a war with themselves. What you trigger is not just anger, not a narcissistic injury, it's the collapse of their entire inner world. How so? Let's find out today. I'm Danish, a narcissistic abuse recovery professional. In this episode, we'll uncover what exactly happens in a narcissist's mind the moment you outsmart them. We're going to walk through each stage of their psychological collapse and expose the reality they spend their entire life trying to hide. So stay until the very end. Before we get started, a quick reminder: I'm hosting a workshop on how to overcome betrayal trauma after narcissistic abuse. In this workshop, I'll be talking about betrayal bonds, moral wounds, and how these experiences fracture your ability to trust yourself and others. More importantly, I will be giving you the practical tools to heal from this kind of trauma. There are only 71 spots left out of 100 at the early bird price, so click the link in bio or in the description to secure yours right now. Let's get into what really happens inside their mind when you outsmart them. The first explosion, shock. The very first thing that hits them is pure shock. Narcissists live in the illusion that they're always smarter, always sharper, always one step ahead. They walk around believing that you staying with them is proof of their superiority. In their mind, your tolerance does not equal loyalty, it equals stupidity. They never feel grateful that you remain. They never think this person must really love me. Instead, they think this person is too blind to see the truth, too weak to leave me. So, when you outsmart them, even in the smallest way, it shatters that illusion. Their brain reads it like a betrayal of the highest order. They thought you were trapped inside their script, but suddenly you have written your own line. Suddenly you are no longer the character they cast you as. This is why they react with such intensity. They do not feel wounded because of the wrong they committed. They feel wounded because you pierced their mask. To them, that is unforgivable. It's like breaking the first seal. Once the illusion of your foolishness cracks, the rest of their fantasy begins to tremble. That shock is the seed that grows into every other reaction. Which brings us to the next thing, the boiling stage, rage. After shock comes rage. But this rage is not always loud. Sometimes it's like boiling water under a lid, bubbling and steaming, waiting for the right moment to burst. Inside, they're seething. You are not supposed to be smart enough to catch them. You were not supposed to step outside the lines they drew. And now they hate you for it. Their entitlement fuels this entire fire. Narcissists genuinely believe they can do what they want, when they want, without consequence. Being exposed, even slightly, is intolerable because it threatens the two things they care about most: their reputation and their supply. More than your feelings, more than the harm they caused, they feel what other people will think. They fear the whispers, the possibility that you may speak the truth out loud. Their ego goes into alarm mode. You are losing control. They're slipping away. If they tell others, the mask will fall. Sometimes that rage comes out instantly in an explosion. Other times it simmers and waits, turns into cold revenge. Either way, the rage is always there, feeding the next stage. Then they transition to the haunted stage, the paranoia. Once this rage sets in, paranoia begins to take over. Their mind turns into a surveillance system that never shuts off. They start thinking, if you figured this out, what else do you know? If you caught me once, will you catch me again? What if you tell others? What if my whole story unravels? This is when they become obsessive. They stalk your social media. They monitor who you talk to. They plant seeds in other people's ears, trying to snare you before you can expose them. They recruit flying monkeys to keep tabs on you, turning your world into a stage where you are constantly being watched. At this point, you live rent free in their head. You dominate their thoughts in ways you never did before. You are the threat they cannot shake, the danger they cannot control. Every step you take feels like an attack to them. And the irony is that by trying so hard to track you, they prove just how much control they have already lost. Then comes the forbidden feeling: shame. You guessed it right. Beneath the shock, rage, and paranoia sits something they will never admit. What is that? Shame. Being outsmarted slices through their false self like a blade. For a split second, they're forced to see the truth they have been running from their whole life. They're not as clever or as powerful or as untouchable as they pretend. This shame is unbearable to them. It feels like annihilation. Narcissists spend their entire lives constructing a false identity to hide from that very feeling. To be reminded of their smallness, their insecurity, and fragility, it's torture. You become the mirror that reflects their true self back at them, and that reflection is too painful to look at. Instead of acknowledging it, they bury it under more rage, more paranoia, and of course, more lies. They cannot sit with shame ever. They have to escape it at all costs. Then is the desperation stage. They become really, really calculated. Since they cannot sit with the shame we were talking about, they flip quickly into calculation. Their mind races to rewrite the story. They ask themselves, how do I twist this? How do I punish them for daring to see the truth? How do I make sure I come out as the winner again? This is when you may see them suddenly laugh things off, pretending you misinterpreted them, or they may switch tactics overnight, moving from coldness to love bombing, from anger to fake calm. They rewrite conversations, gaslight your memory, and then try to convince you that you are the unstable one. They will even change the narrative publicly. They'll paint you as the betrayer, the liar, and of course the manipulator. For them, reality is very flexible. Facts do not matter as much as appearances. As long as they can bend the story into one where they are in control, they feel safe again. But underneath it all, the humiliation still burns. The final and the twisted stage: admiration and envy. This one is something that most people do not talk about. Alongside their hatred, there is a flicker of admiration. In that moment when you outsmart them, they can't help but respect your clarity, courage, and intelligence. Deep inside, a voice admits, they got me. But admiration is dangerous for them because to admire you is to admit you are above them. And nothing terrifies a narcissist more than that. So admiration curls into envy. Envy turns into resentment. Resentment turns into desire to destroy the very thing they respect. Can you see the dichotomy? This is why their behavior becomes so erratic once you outsmart them. One moment they may act calm, even affectionate. The next, they lash out with cruelty or smear campaigns. They are at war with themselves, torn between grudging respect and a desperate need to bring you down. So when you outsmart a narcissist, remember this: you're not just winning an argument or defeating them simply, you're collapsing their entire inner world. You're shaking the foundation of the false self they built to survive. And that collapse sets off a chain of shock, rage, paranoia, shame, calculation, and twisted admiration. They will never admit it, but in that moment, you're the one in power. And that is why they fight so hard to rewrite the story. Because deep down, they know you have seen the truth and they cannot make you unsee it. With that, let's bring this episode to an end. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, as always, let the healing begin and continue.